everybody, and welcome back to our channel. Just going to do a little bit more about the 300 TDI engine. About 2 years ago I did a video on the 300 TDI extolling the virtues of how good and robust the engines are. Got a bit of bad news though. This one hasn't been quite so good and robust. Right, well this is a roughly about a 1995 engine which I totally rebuilt in 2010. We spent 3 years going around Europe in it with no problems whatsoever. But since we've come over to America, we have been plagued with an overheating problem. We've got across Canada, all the way up through the Rocky Mountains, down into Washington State, and then the moment we hit Idaho, our problem started. Initially started with the original plastic Land Rover header tank that split down the seam, which they're very prone to doing. So we lost all the water there and it overheated. I bypassed the pipes on the bottom of the tank and we drove on till we got to our destination and waited for a new header tank to turn up, which was then fitted. So after replacing the header tank, we soldiered on. We went through Yellowstone and Yosemite, climbed up over some big hills. Again though, we were plagued with a bit of poor performance, and she didn't like the altitude. She used to get quite warm. This went on and we managed to get ourselves down to Santa Cruz, where eventually the head gasket went big time, and we were in a position where we had to put it into a shop to get it sorted out. It took us a long time to find a shop that was prepared to do it, and when we had it in there, they'd found that the head gasket had gone between number 2 and number 3 cylinder big time. So we suspected we had probably a distorted or a cracked head, but unfortunately in Santa Cruz there was nowhere that could actually check the head for us to see whether or not it was any good. So I got Rovers North to supply us with a brand new head to save any problems, and we put the new head on. They did the head gasket, and that was it. So once they'd finished the job in Santa Cruz, we ended up hitting the road again, carrying on going south. We came down through Arizona and then carried on further down into Baja, California, and crossed over from Baja, California onto the mainland, followed the main road down the coast, and then headed back up towards Oaxaca through the mountains, climbing up to 5,000 feet, which is when the second new header tank we had decided to let go again. It was beginning to get quite an issue, and we didn't know quite what was happening, so we ordered a new header tank, which is an Ali Sport aluminium tank. It was a strange scenario. I wasn't sure if it was the plastics that were just giving out on it or whatever, because we had no signs of any visible water leaks. All we had was this slight drop in power and water billowing out of the header tank because the seams had split. She never gave any real indication of a head gasket gone. There was no sort of massive boiling, except for when the header tank gave way. So we fitted this new header tank and went on again. So once we'd got this header tank fitted, we carried on our journey from Oaxaca, headed south again, and then turned east across Mexico in towards Belize, eventually getting to Belize. We then had to do a bit of a hurry exit from Belize because Hurricane Beryl was barreling through there. So we shot down to Guatemala, did a lot of climbs up through the mountains, no problems at all. Got down into Guatemala, and then as we were entering Guatemala City, going up in altitude, she decided to boil again. So we stopped, refilled it with water, left it a while, started up, off we went again, no problems at all. So we spent a very enjoyable time in Antigua, Guatemala. We then eventually left, went up to Lake Atitlan, which is high in the mountains inside a massive great big ring of volcanoes with a huge great lake which is absolutely stunning and beautiful. If you ever get a chance to go there, do. But to get out, it was quite a climb, and again, as soon as we started doing long climbs, she started getting hot, until we reached the point where we had a massive great big climb we were going up, heading towards Guatepeque, where the plan was we would stay there for one night and then cross the border back into Mexico the next day. But about 5 miles outside Guatepeque, the head gasket went big time with an almighty pop. The engine just stopped. I took the rad cap off when it cooled down a little bit, put some more water in. It took about 6 litres of water, started it up with the rad cap off, and it just literally pumped water straight out of the header tank. So we were stood there scratching our heads wondering what we were going to do, and as luck would have it, the car stopped and the guy came back into the lay-by where we were, and he was a diesel mechanic, had his own workshop in Guatepeque. So he arranged for a recovery truck to come and pick us up, and we got a ride back into the city on the back of a recovery truck to his workshop, where in the next couple of days they stripped the engine down, checked the head, which they said was okay. The head gasket had gone again between number 2 and number 3 cylinders, which was a bit suspect. They put it all back together, everything seemed fine, and we headed off for the border. Got across the border, started coming up through the mountains again. She wasn't giving any real major problems, and then we stayed one night in a hotel once we got over the border into Mexico. Started up the next morning to set off, and we hadn't gone 5 miles before the old problem started again. The boiling came back, rapid overheating, loss of water again, and this was the strange thing I couldn't get my head around. We were losing water, not a single visible sign anywhere of where the water was going. No drips underneath, no water in the oil, it was just disappearing. So the only way it could do that is if it's actually going into the combustion chamber and out through the exhaust. But even then, saying that, the vehicle wasn't smoking badly. But stopped again we did with major overheating problems. And we were on our way back to Oaxaca, heading for El Rancho RV Park, which is a beautiful place run by fantastic people. We didn't quite know what to do, so Nikki messaged one of the owners here and Paco, and asked them if they could recommend a recovery truck company to pick us up, because like I said, we were 130 miles away and there was no way we were going to get back, because the vehicle wouldn't go any further than about 5 miles before it wanted to make tea. And Paco, bless him, he said, don't worry, I'll sort it. So he phoned Nicky back and said, look, I've got a recovery truck organised, he's on his way, he'll come and pick you up. So they drove all the way from Oaxaca to where we were, through the mountains, picked us up, and then it was a 5-hour journey back to here, all the way up through the mountains, which was very interesting. crammed in the truck of this recovery wagon. Eventually getting back here in the evening at about 11:30, where Paco was here to greet us and offering us a room for the night rather than having to put our tent up, but we ended up putting the tent up. We said we were okay. And that's when we had to sit down and make some big decisions. Basically, because how many more times do you do the head gasket?
Yeah.
There's got to be something fundamentally wrong internally with this engine. Either the new head is cracked, or distorted, or there's an internal crack in the block, or whatever. How many times do you throw good money at bad? And it was a case of, if we took the head off again and there was nothing obvious with it, and nobody could find anything obvious with it, and we put it back together with yet another head gasket, how far would we get before the whole scenario started again? So we've bit the bullet and decided it's time for Mabel to have a heart transplant. And it's very expensive heart transplant, but we have a brand new engine on its way. Well, it's actually in Mexico now, coming from M&D Engineering. We've gone for the 2.8 version of the 300 TDI, and it remains a mystery. I mean, as luck would have it, where we're staying, just up the road, there's a school of mechanics, which I've been and had a chat with them. Paco took me up there as an interpreter, and we sat down and had a chat with them, and they've agreed to change the engine for me. Only proviso being they get to keep the old engine, which I'm happy with, because as far as I'm concerned, it's just a lump of scrap metal. So, like I said, the engine is now in Mexico. We're at the process at the moment of negotiating with customs about how much duty we're going to have to pay on it, and hopefully next week we may be going down the road, fingers crossed, of getting the new engine put in. Remains to be seen, but we'll keep you informed. Thanks for watching.